Well, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate having a little time to catch up. If you would, can you share a bit about yourself, your background, and where you're joining us from?
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm Jaunice Sills McSwain, calling in from Los Angeles, where I've lived for the last 7 years. And I work in the television industry. I lead our content planning and strategy for entertainment networks over at NBC Universal. But in my spare time, and really my passion, is leading the Black Women Film Network, which is a nonprofit that's based in Atlanta, but we also have national presence. And it's essentially a collective of women who are preserving the voice of Black women in film and television. But we're also preparing the next generation of content creators. And we do that through effective programming. We have our annual Black Women Film Network Summit, where we have different industry power players come and do master classes and workshops and panels, really empowering women to enter this very difficult industry with the tools and resources, not only to survive, but also to thrive. And then we also have our annual film festival, which is one of my favorite experiences that we have. We're a very boutique film festival, but our criteria is that every film must be produced by, directed by, or starring a Black woman. And this year we had over 150 submissions from around the globe, and we were able to showcase them this past year with an amazing partner, Quelle TV, which is actually female-led and Black-owned. And so we were able to showcase the films this year on there. So we have a lot of exciting opportunities. We're always looking for members. We're always looking for volunteers at the Black Women Film Network. But you can follow us on Instagram at Black Women Film, and you can also check us out online at blackwomenfilm.org.
Fantastic. Thanks. And we'll make sure that we include that information so that our viewers can follow you and get involved.
Awesome.
Love to hear a bit about how you got involved in the industry. So what was your gateway and why were you interested in getting into television?
Sure. I think I kind of have a unique story because I've wanted to be in the industry since I was in the 3rd grade. And it was always motivated by the concept of just storytelling. So when I was in 3rd grade, I wasn't like the other kids who would give like the book reports just live, like in front of the class standing up there. I actually had like a TV set that had a cutout screen, and I would bring these breaking live like news reports as my, book reports. And so, I was just trying to create like a captive audience who just held on to every single word in the same way that I saw journalists do on TV. So I actually wanted to be on air. Long story short, by the time I got to college, I tried out to be a sports anchor on a TV show in Atlanta called Take Two Sports. And it was doing some sports commentating. It ended up getting canceled after maybe 6 episodes that season that I was on. When I learned of really the reasoning why it was canceled, I was at that point introduced to what a programming department is at like a network. And the show came on at like 1 o'clock in the morning. So I was like, well, why'd they put it on at 1 o'clock in the morning? Of course it got canceled. No one's seeing it, And so that really kind of sparked my interest in wanting to be in television and behind the scenes. And being in a programming and then also a production capacity, being able to see that that's where I believe truly the power lies, and be able to execute what the show is and, the physical production of it, but then also the strategy behind where it lands, right, on a schedule, or how it faces a consumer and ultimately gets to your screen, was something that I was just really interested in. So I had a lot of different internships in college. I interned at Tyler Perry Studios, MTV, HBO, and their original programming and strategy department. So by the time I graduated, I really had a competitive advantage to figure out what I wanted to do. And ultimately that was programming and production. And so I ended up starting my career at MTV in New York in the associates program. And then, just continued to build and learn, and just curious, and went on to work at BET for a number of years in their programming strategy group, and eventually moved out to Los Angeles in 2013 to launch Revolt TV, which was Puff Daddy's music cable network. And I led the programming and scheduling division and operations division there. So fast forward now 7 years since that launch. Now I'm, in a content planning and strategy role at NBC Universal. But my main driver for getting into the industry was just always about storytelling and representation and getting our stories out there in different capacities. No matter what network I was at, my mission was always about storytelling and diversity. So when I was at MTV, it was actually the logo channel, which is the LGBT channel. When I was at BET, it was obviously for Black people. When I was at Revolt, it was for millennials. So, just tried to run the gamut at these different niche cable networks.
That's incredible. And I love that you've had such a holistic experience as well, starting in college with your internship so that you could carry all that expertise with you. Question for you. So were there different realities than what you expected once you finally started working in the business? And, maybe on two tiers, as an intern and then as a full-time employee? Was it what you expected, or were there some things that surprised you?
Oh, I definitely think there were tons of surprises. One being, particularly in my early career, I thought that you had to make a very early decision on what lane you would go into. So when I first started in production, I thought that, if you're wanting to be a producer, right, or let's say even a showrunner, there were kind of like those two lanes. You're either a production coordinator, a production manager, then you're a line producer. But if, I wasn't really interested in budgeting or business or accounting, then do I do the showrunner route where you become like a writer and a writer's assistant? But what I learned very early on is you don't have to be defined by that particular trajectory. It's actually really interesting the more you explore and the more I went further in my career that you could become multi-hyphenate. And that actually makes you more of like a stellar candidate that people and companies and brands want to work with when you can do more than one thing. So if you are a producer, but you understand the post-production process and editing and all of that, it all helps, right, to make you have, more skill sets to be able to go to work in different ways. And then I think the other thing that was surprising, but really shouldn't have been, was, one, it's not as glamorous as everyone thinks. It's a lot of hard work, sweat, and tears. And then I think a lot of people probably have the misconception, and I did, that these companies make so much money that you too would make so much money. But I know, and particularly in the production route and having to climb up the ladder, you're not always paid fairly or at, certain rates that you see some of your peers in other industries doing when they do something that's entry level. So that was surprising.
No, that makes a ton of sense. I'd love to talk a bit about hiring in the industry and also about diverse representation. Are those two connected? Do you see them as separate? Love to get your thoughts on both of those items.
Oh, I definitely think they're connected. And I view representation, I think, a myriad of ways. I think it's a really multi-dimensional term. Particularly representation, of course, is the representation of our stories. Making sure that people of all different backgrounds are seen and heard, that their stories matter, no matter your sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, disabilities, that those are all coming to a big or small screen, and that, we're showcasing unique perspectives that can travel universally as human stories is one area of representation. I think another area of representation is actually in the physical representation of these, actors and stars and producers and, writers and artists. And so when I mean that, it's actually the agents, the attorneys, the managers, the publicists being diverse so that they can represent this clientele. And also knowing that just because an agent is Black doesn't mean that they have to represent only Black talent. Representation also means that these people are qualified and credible to represent other groups of people within the industry. I also think that, representation is about the boardroom and people at all different levels of companies, because it really starts at the top with leadership and making sure that you have representation at all levels, whether that be assistants to managers, directors, executive vice presidents, and then people on corporate boards, that there's representation there. One, because for me in particular, as someone who went the more corporate route in television versus on the ground production, it's important to have representation of people of color at all of those different levels so you can see what's possible. I know that I could be the CEO of a network. I know that I could run a studio one day because I see, particularly for me, Black women who are in that position. So that that representation, it means for me more possibility. It really is about the long game and having, more experiences. Oh, I know one. Another one I think is just representation behind the camera or above and below the line in particular. And one of the things that I hear a lot at the Black Women Film Network is, particularly as it relates to like unions and more women wanting to work as like costume, designers or makeup artists or hairstylists, is that that's important to have representation too. A lot of, Black actresses for years have had to suffer with non-Black people doing their hair or makeup and being frustrated on set and having to just redo it themselves because there wasn't a Black woman or man there that could take care of them. So that's another form of representation to have behind the scenes on these sets to make sure that people feel inclusive and feel good about the work that they're about to go perform, feeling good and looking good.
So that sort of leads right into the next question that I was going to ask is, what role do you see Film Connx playing in that future that you just mentioned to us, both with broadening and production hubs and also with diversification of who's working above, below, in front of, and behind the camera?
Absolutely. I think you all have a huge opportunity, particularly as it relates to just the technology and the automation and doing the work on behalf of these companies in partnership, because you're vetting, established, credible crew who, people always say they can't find diverse talent, diverse hiring, and yet here is an entire company dedicated to that. And so I think you all have a tremendous opportunity, and I see you all playing a major role in creating more jobs, because what's interesting about particularly people who are in production is, sometimes it's contract work. And so you really are looked at as an entrepreneur yourself, as a film entrepreneur, as a TV entrepreneur. And so you all are going to be able to help more individuals create more legacy for themselves and more enterprising opportunities for themselves, being that they'll have jobs potentially around the country that could be, 6 months at a time, take a month break, another 6 months, they will be getting consistent work. And that's really exciting.
Love it. And thank you. We agree. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you remind us again how we can find and follow you and keep up with what you're up to?
Sure. Well, I'm on Instagram at Sills1, SILLSNUMBER, the number 1. And then please follow us on Black Women Film. So you can go to our website, blackwomenfilm.org, or you can follow us on Instagram at Black Women Film, or you can follow us on Facebook at the Black Women Film Network. We have some really exciting opportunities coming up in 2021, so just check in with us and also take our survey on our website. We'd love to know what you're looking for, how we can help. And then I'll just do one last plug. So on December 1st is National Giving Tuesday. And so we, as a nonprofit, are definitely campaigning to raise money and funds to have for our programming and also the scholarships that we give out every year. I'm actually a former scholarship winner turned board member and now chairwoman of the board. And so this organization is really near and dear to my heart. So I'd love everyone to potentially give to us. So definitely go to our website or just follow us on Instagram. We'll be doing a large campaign related to Giving Tuesday. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. We are excited to partner with you and excited to spend some time getting to know you this afternoon. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. All right. Talk soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.